The ship docked, and I stood at the gangway with my luggage, waiting to go ashore. Where the hell was Tina? This was my first cruise, and it became my personal hell. And so she came up to me without luggage. "Where is your luggage?" I asked. "Tom, Wes and I are staying on board and going on another cruise. There was room in Wes' cabin, so we had a place to stay. I'll be back in a week," she said. I gave her an angry look and simply nodded. I handed her an envelope with $2,000. "Here, this is enough to cover my part of the cruise. You will pay for all your expenses yourself," I said. I turned around and went down the ladder to the shore. I hailed a taxi and told the driver to take me to the airport. I think I need to go back to the beginning and tell you where this all started. My name is Thomas Paris, but everyone calls me Tom. I am 65 years old, 5 feet 10 inches tall, and weigh 190 pounds. I am semi-retired and work as a heavy equipment operator. Sometimes I work part-time when my old company doesn't have enough people. Even at my age, I'm in pretty good shape compared to most of my peers. I go to the gym 3 times a week, or more often if I'm not busy at work. Our school also opens the pool 3 times a week, and I swim. I've been married twice. My first wife's name was Diana. She was my high school sweetheart. After high school, I did odd jobs and then went to heavy equipment operator school. After getting a job in construction, I worked for the same company for 44 years. Diana and I got married a couple of years after high school. Our marriage lasted several years, and then we somehow burned out and soon divorced. My second marriage was to Jody. We lived together for 35 years. She was married twice before me. From her first marriage, she had 4 daughters, and from her second, she had a son. Together, we had a son. Our life was happy and successful until it all ended when she was diagnosed with a terrible cancer diagnosis. We fought through it together until it became too much for her. Finally, she gave up and died. To say I was crushed is an understatement. I took her loss very hard and did almost nothing for 6 to 8 months. One day, I had a serious conversation with myself. I realized that Jody would want me to stop feeling sorry for myself and start a new life. So I signed up for several dating sites and started dating different women over the next year until I met Kelly Christina Bundy. She did not like being confused with the heroine of the TV show and asked to call her Tina. They say opposites are attracted to each other like a moth to a flame. This is probably what happened to us. I enjoyed golfing, bowling, and watching sports on TV. She loved shopping and watching those damn reality shows that I hated. Why were we together? I don't have the answer, but we just clicked. After 6 months of dating, I moved into her apartment at the end of June. I put my house up for sale. I was tired of taking care of it. It was nice to have someone else mow the lawn and remove the snow. Her apartment was small, 2 bedrooms and a little over 1,000 square feet of total space. Not much room for 2. A month after I moved in, my mother died and I inherited her apartment, which was almost twice the size. We updated my mother's apartment, replaced carpets, appliances, and repainted the interior. When the renovation was completed in September, we moved there. Tina rented out her apartment, and we lived in the new apartment for almost a year. Tina was called the Black Widow. She was married 3 times, and each husband died. She lived with her first husband, Mark, for 30 years, and they had 3 sons. He was a heavy smoker and developed lung cancer, from which he died. Her second husband, Louis, was hit by a car and killed. The third husband, Robert, had an addiction and died when he lost control of his car and crashed into a pole. I can't say that she was to blame for their deaths, but the nickname stuck with her, even if she wasn't the cause. Tina was more experienced in the dating world than I was. She dated men between marriages. After Robert's death, she began dating again. Her first boyfriend after that was Carl, whom she dated for almost a year. The second was Wes, whose relationship lasted a couple of years. Wes wanted to marry her, but she didn't want to. She never explained why she didn't want to marry him. Tina could talk about her past romances in general terms, but rarely went into detail. She talked about her ex-husbands more often. but hardly mentioned Robert. Apparently, this was the darkest stage in her life. I decided that the past remains in the past, and what is more important to me is what is happening now and what we can achieve together. Tina was 5 feet 1 inch tall. Her hair was blonde and her eyes were green. She had a strikingly beautiful face for a woman her age. She was 5 years older than me. Her zodiac sign was Cancer, and she believed in all this astrological nonsense. She was a little plump, but I would call her pleasant to look at. Her breasts were 38 dd, which I found out later. Tina and I first met in January after several weeks of chatting on a dating site. We met at her house. Her apartment was on the other side of the river, about 5 minutes from my house. We met off and on for the next 5 to 6 months. I learned that she had spent most of her life in the same area, just a few miles from my home. In her youth, she owned a real estate agency and worked as a mortgage broker. It was strange that we had not crossed paths before, living so close. Apparently, we just moved in different circles. I remember well the day before Memorial Day when everything happened for the first time. It was late in the evening, or rather, early in the morning, about 2 o'clock. Well, I think it's time for me to go home. You need to get at least 4 hours of sleep before work, I said. You can sleep here with me if you want, she replied, going into the bathroom to get ready for bed. My eyes opened wide and a satisfied smile appeared on my face as I waited for her to come out of the bathroom. I was already imagining the passionate sex we would have. She came out of the bathroom in her pajamas and said, "But without sex." This unsettled me a little, but I decided that it was better to stay in her bed than to go home. I returned to work, and it was Friday, the start of Memorial Day weekend. The company gave us 4 days off, which was always nice. Our firm was famous for providing an extra day of rest whenever possible. One day, the president of the company told me, "Tommy, my boy, sometimes you gotta give the guys an extra day off so they can spend their damn money. When they return to work, they will be penniless and hungry for money. They will work even harder to earn them." These are almost his exact words. It's amazing how such a phrase remains in the memory for a long time. When I asked him about this, he said that his grandfather told him the same thing. Tina was planning a barbecue party on Saturday for her friends and family where I would meet some of them. On Friday night, she was drinking white wine and discussing what to do for the party. I suggested using an electric leaf blower to clear the patio of leaves and debris. Tina drank Chardonnay. It was her favorite wine. She was already starting to get a little drunk. This was the first time I saw her drunk. When we went to restaurants, she usually had 1 or 2 glasses of wine with dinner. After a few drinks, she became very talkative and began discussing many topics, including talking about the past. This happened a couple of years ago to my friend Priscilla at our annual 4th of July party. I was dating her ex-husband Wes at the time. He showed up at the party, and by midnight, we ended up in my bed. He stayed with me overnight. Priscilla spent half the night looking for him, and then gave up and went home. My boys hid his car, and Priscilla must have thought he left the party. Just don't tell anyone that I told you this. Wes and I dated a couple of years before you, and no one in Priscilla's family knew I was dating him. I want to maintain a good relationship with Priscilla and her family, but if they find out that I was with Wes, it could ruin everything, she admitted. Later, we went to bed, and she kept talking about everything. After discussing several topics, including our relationship, she suddenly said, "You know, I can only have sex with you if I'm drunk." It was a low blow. I was shocked. I lay there with a lump in my throat and didn't say a word to her. I don't think she even realized what she said or how I took it. Finally, she was exhausted and fell asleep. I lay there for a while, then quickly got dressed and went home. On the way home, I seriously thought about our relationship. Obviously, she lied. She was drunk, but there was still no sex. But how could you say such a thing to a person with whom you are just starting a relationship? The next day she called and texted me at least a dozen times before I finally answered. "What do you need, Tina? Why did you leave? Why didn't you answer my calls? I was amazed by what you said yesterday." I decided it was best to leave. What did I say? refresh my memory. You said you would never have sex with me unless you were drunk. That's not what I meant. But I interrupted her. Don't call me again, just leave me alone, I said and hung up. In the afternoon, the doorbell rang, and I immediately knew it was her. I should have ignored her, but she kept calling me on my cell phone and knocking on the door. I didn't want her to make a scene in front of the neighbors, so like a fool, I let her in. I turned around and walked down the hallway into the living room with Tina following me. It was her first time in my house, and she looked around, taking in everything around her. She sat down on the sofa, hoping that I would sit next to her, but I didn't. I sat in the chair by the window. She started by talking about some trifles, and I was silent. Finally, she said, Tom, I'm very sorry that you misunderstood my words. It wasn't directed at you, but rather against myself. My first husband, Mark, liked to get me drunk. I was losing some of my inner inhibitions and becoming a little wild in bed. I didn't mean to humiliate you. Well, you have a very strange way of saying it. I know it sounded terrible, and I'm really sorry that it caused any misunderstanding, she said. We discussed the situation for some time, and she persuaded me to return to her party. I resisted until she came to me, sat on her lap, and hugged me. She kissed me in a way that stirred my emotions. Well, I'm a man, and we know that a woman's body can influence us. I gave in and went with her back to her apartment for the party. Although we didn't have sex on Saturday and Sunday, I still spent both nights in her bed. It was the weekend after the Memorial Day holiday. The evening was warm and beautiful for the first week of June. The sun had already set, and moonlight had just appeared in the sky. We sat on the veranda, drank Chardonnay, and watched the cars pass by and people walking to the park or to the harbor. We drank a bottle and a half of wine. Although I was not a big wine drinker, I didn't notice how quickly it hit me. It was already late, so I went into the bathroom while she was cleaning the table. I had taken a pill an hour before, hoping that this would be the night I would finally succeed. I sometimes have problems, and I hoped that the pill would do its job. I dreamed of full sex. Tina came out of the bathroom and looked at me with a seductive gaze. That night, we made love. June was a wonderful month. Our relationship became stronger and stronger, and our sex life was wonderful. I won't say we had sex every night, but we had some sort of intimacy 4 to 5 times a week, more than I've had in the last couple of years since my wife died. The 4th of July arrived and Tina organized a party to celebrate the holiday and to watch the fireworks. About 50 people gathered at the party. We had a big picnic with lots of food and drink. One of her ideas was to make different flavors of jellies mixed with similar tasting types of vodka, called jelly shots. I had never tried jelly shots before and didn't pay much attention to their possible consequences. Tina kept slipping me these damn shots, and I got thoroughly drunk. Somehow, later in the evening, I managed to take a pill. I'm not sure if it was 1 or 2 pills, and I don't know if it's worth taking if you're very drunk. After all the guests had left, we managed to have sex in every room of her apartment. August was another good month for us. We went to Niagara Falls for her birthday and had a great time. The waterfall was amazing, and so was the sex. One of the strange things was that she was afraid of spiders. She noticed something black moving across the ceiling. I took a piece of toilet paper and tried to catch the spider, but I missed and the damn thing fell on the bed right next to her. She did a somersault from the bed to the floor. I collapsed on the bed and grabbed the spider, but as soon as I caught it, she hit me on the hand with a sandal. Not once, not twice, but 3 times before I screamed at her to stop. The situation was quite comical until my arm started to hurt. Yes, I caught a spider and flushed it down the toilet. This spider incident ended our break, and we took a taxi to Skylon Tower. Here are some facts about the tower. Its construction began in May 1964, and it opened to the public in October 1965. Construction cost $7 million. The restaurant seats 276 people. It rotates on its axis once every hour, providing a beautiful view of the waterfall and the city. The tower rises 520 feet above street level. One of the amazing facts was spiders. Yes, those damn spiders again. They are all over the windows of the restaurant at 520 feet in the air. How did they get there? I wonder if they really walked up if they didn't use the elevator. When we returned to our hotel room, she grabbed my hand and literally dragged me into the room. She practically tore my clothes off before throwing me onto the bed. We had sex and then lay hugging each other until we fell asleep. We planned a short trip to Florida for Labor Day. We went to Orlando with her two sons and their girlfriends. We didn't have much to do. We spent a couple of days in Orlando and then went to Vero Beach for a couple of days before returning to Orlando for our flight home. But the strange thing was that, despite our vibrant sex life over the past 2 months, we had never had sex in Florida. I think that's when our sexual romance began to fade. We still lived in her apartment, but upon our return, we began to move into my house, which I inherited from my mother. The painters finished work at the end of August. Appliances and carpets were installed in the second week of September. The move took almost the entire month until we finally transported all the necessary things. The apartment was just under 2,000 square feet with a full basement. Thank God for the basement. I couldn't believe how much junk we had accumulated, plus everything that was left of my mom. Our passion began to cool. She got a kidney stone, and it was very painful. It took her almost a month to fully recover. Of course, during this period, we did not have sex. I've never had kidney stones, but watching her and talking to others who have had them made me realize how painful it is. After that, our relationship began to noticeably cool down, although I still don't know what the reason was. This may be due to the move to a new home or the fact that, despite 3 marriages, she has never lived with a man outside of marriage. Or maybe it was a combination of illness and moving to a new home where she didn't have complete control. However, she became more distant and less affectionate. December was a little better. First of all, it was my birthday in December, and we went to the casino for the weekend. I got some sex for my birthday, but she drank a lot of wine and was drunk. Sex was not the same as in June. Don't get me wrong, it's always nice to get a release, but something was wrong, although it's hard to say what exactly. On New Year's Eve, we threw a party at our apartment for her friends, relatives, and my family members. Tina got into a drinking competition with my 25-year-old granddaughter. It was funny watching them compete, drinking glass after glass. It looks like Ellen drank 2.5 bottles of wine and Tina only drank 1.5. Well, you guessed it. Tina complained all evening that she felt bad and felt sick. Over the next couple of months, nothing much changed. In mid-February, we took a vacation and went to St. Pete Beach, Florida for a week. We stayed at the Grand Plaza Hotel, right on the beach. The trip was planned to recharge our batteries and refresh our relationship. The batteries were recharged, and our relationship seemed good for the week. We arrived at the airport around noon, picked up our luggage, and rented a car from Alamo. We were given a map of St. Petersburg, and by 2 o'clock in the afternoon, we had already reached the hotel. Our room was on the 8th floor, overlooking the beach and the stunning blue ocean. We unpacked our things and changed clothes. We spent an hour walking around the hotel to look around. We spent the next few days sightseeing, spending time with her friend Jen and her boyfriend Dick, and enjoying the beach. I took binoculars with me to look at girls with toned bodies. The beach was really full of young and slender girls in skimpy bikinis. Our room had an amazing view of the sunset. The weather was great, with temperatures hovering around 75 degrees most days, although Tina wished it was a little warmer, like 80 or so. After a day at the beach, we took a short nap in the afternoon. We had a reservation at the Spinners restaurant, which is on the roof of the hotel and slowly rotates. Spinners were similar to the Skylon Tower in Niagara Falls. The restaurant rotates 360 degrees in an hour, providing magnificent views of the beach and ocean. It was a great place to watch the sunset. The restaurant was located at a height of 12 floors, and from its height one could admire a beautiful view of the ocean. After dinner, we walked along the beach, splashing in the waves. Back at the hotel, we stopped at a bar outside for a nightcap and some live music. It was already around midnight when we returned to our room. We were both already slightly tipsy. Tina went into the bathroom, and I heard her turn on the shower. I turned off the lights in the room, opened the door to the balcony, and enjoyed the view. The night was calm, the air was warm, and a light ocean breeze brushed my face. The full moon slowly rose over the ocean, filling everything around with silvery light. I heard the shower turn off. Tina looked like she was just taking a quick, refreshing shower. She came out of the bathroom wearing a robe. I needed to pee, so I went to the bathroom to relieve myself and took a quick shower as well. Hanging on the bathroom door were my pajama shorts and a t-shirt that I had put on when I left. Tina stood on the balcony. She must have heard me because she turned, took a couple of steps towards me and, smiling, threw off her robe. When I looked at her face, she knew from the expression in my eyes that I was delighted. "Well, do you like it?" she asked quietly. "Very. You look just incredible," I breathed. "I'm all yours, completely yours," she whispered. We continued our passionate night, enjoying intimacy and forgetting about everything in the world, plunging into our feelings and passion. After that, we lay quietly next to each other, tired but completely satisfied. "It was so good, Tom," Tina whispered, closing her eyes. "Yes, it was wonderful," I replied, gently kissing her forehead. We fell asleep again in each other's arms, enjoying the warmth and closeness. I thought that after such a wonderful time spent in Florida, our relationship would take off. But the exact opposite happened. Tina became even more distant, and our sex life practically ceased. I tried to talk to her about what was going on, but she said she was fine. However, in the evenings there were more and more minor irritations. She often complained of body pain and placed warm heating pads on the painful areas, which she heated in the microwave. Sometimes it was an arm, sometimes a leg, sometimes a stomach. At some point, I just stopped trying. Deep down, I began to suspect that she was deceiving me. For several weeks, I carefully watched her actions, but nothing special happened. In March, she threw herself into planning a cruise for October. She persuaded her 2 sons and their girlfriends to join us, as well as another couple. This was an 8-day cruise departing from Fort Lauderdale. We were supposed to fly there on Friday, spend the night in a hotel, and board the ship the next day. We somehow got through the next few months, looking more like brother and sister than a couple. In July, she had a major conflict with her son, Mark Jr., who refused to go on a cruise. As a result, only 6 people remained in our company. Although their relationship was restored, this wound did not heal completely, and there was no way back. This conflict caused Tina great stress. She ate poorly, and when she ate, she began to feel sick. We barely survived the hot days of August, and now Labor Day was approaching, and the cruise was only a month away. She had been planning this cruise since March. This was my first cruise, but for Tina, it was far from the first. She was an experienced traveler, knowledgeable about how to plan a cruise, what to see and do on board. She was a platinum member of the cruise club and received various privileges such as priority boarding. We spent September choosing what to take on our trip. Tina reviewed my items 4 times before giving final approval. Finally, departure day arrived, and we boarded a Delta flight with the rest of our group to fly to Florida. The flight went well, and all luggage arrived safely in Fort Lauderdale. We had dinner at the hotel restaurant, and then we all went to the lounge bar, and this is where the problems began. We sat at a table in a bar, men on one side, women on the other. Tina and I were sitting on the edge of the table, and then a man I had never seen before came up to us. He placed a chair right next to Tina. She jumped up and hugged him and then kissed him, which he reciprocated. My eyebrows immediately rose. "Wes, what are you doing here?" she asked. "I'm staying at this hotel for the night. Tomorrow I'm boarding the Splendor for an 8-day cruise," he replied. "Is it true?" "This is the same ship we are going on," Tina exclaimed. For some reason, she didn't introduce me, and I soon became the forgotten son, while they chatted animatedly with each other. I could only listen because I didn't know what else to do. But this situation seemed more and more unpleasant to me. They talked as if nothing was bothering them and completely ignored me. "Okay, it's late. I'll go to bed. Are you coming with me, Tina? I asked. She simply shook her head and continued talking to Wes. Well, I thought, this is the beginning of the disaster. It looked like this cruise was going to be a nightmare for me. I wished the others good night and left. I took the elevator to our floor and opened the door to the room. I had apnea, so I used a CPAP machine to breathe while I slept. I went to bed, connected the breathing apparatus, and fell asleep. Around 5 in the morning, Tina finally returned to the room. She staggered, took her pajamas from the bed, and went to the bathroom. I heard the shower turn on. Why would she take a shower at such a time? When she finished and returned to the bedroom, she lay down in bed and fell asleep instantly. All this time I pretended to be asleep. I lay there for another hour, unable to stand it any longer, and finally got up. I went to the bathroom and saw her clothes thrown on the floor. I pulled out her panties and smelled them. Crap. Any man who has ever been intimate with a woman knows this smell. Holy shit, I thought. This bastard spent the night with Wes, having sex with him. Now, what should I do? If I had been smarter, I would have packed my bags and taken the first flight home. But no, this fool here continued his dream vacation. I threw her dirty panties in the trash. Maybe that would let her know that I knew and wasn't happy. I shaved, took a shower, and got dressed. He quickly packed his things into a travel bag. Before leaving, I took my cruise documents and passport from her bag. I then grabbed my luggage and left the room. I arrived at the hotel restaurant around 7 in the morning to have breakfast. I needed to kill time, so I sat in the far corner, ordered breakfast, and read the local newspaper. When I finished, I found the USA Today newspaper someone had left behind and read it cover to cover, trying to kill a couple more hours. As soon as I finished, our whole company, except Tina, came to have breakfast. They didn't notice me because I was hidden behind the newspaper. When they finished breakfast and left, I also went out and took a taxi to the ship. There was an hour left before boarding began. While I was waiting, one of the luggage bearers tried several times to take my suitcases. Each time I politely told him that I could handle it myself, but at some point my patience ran out. Get the hell away from me. I can handle my damn suitcases myself. If you send one of your illiterate assistants to me again, I will throw them into the sea. You are in our country, and you could already learn English instead of jabbering in your Spanish, which no one understands, I shouted in rage. Yes, I was pissed, and this poor guy got it all out of me. Later, when I had cooled down, I walked up to the person I had yelled at and gave him a 20. He simply smiled, took the money, and continued doing his job. Finally, I entered the terminal, took my badge photo, and received my card for in-flight purchases. This card was similar to a credit card. After presenting my passport and cruise card, I was allowed to board. As usual, I was unlucky our cabin was not ready yet. I gave the cleaning lady $10, and she allowed me to leave my luggage in the closet. I left the cabin and walked around the ship a bit, stopping at the buffet for something to eat. I continued to explore the ship until I was at the top, looking down the gangway. The ship was scheduled to sail at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I saw Tina and Wes come on board together as a couple. Wes was carrying her large suitcase and Tina was carrying both of their carry-on bags. Damn it, I thought, is there still time to jump ship and fly home? At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, without much fanfare, the ship left the pier and headed out to the open sea. I was expecting a big celebration with confetti flying everywhere and a marching band playing music. Apparently, I didn't understand anything about cruises. In the central part of the ship, near the main pool, there was some kind of ceremony with a small amount of confetti that flew straight into the water. What a holiday! I tried to avoid Tina as much as possible, but at some point I needed to change for dinner, and she was in the cabin. Where were you during the day? You didn't help me with my suitcases when I boarded. I was the only one carrying my things, she said sharply. Sorry, but I was a little confused by your actions last night, I replied. What do you mean? She asked. I just shrugged. Wes and I are just friends, nothing more, she said. Of course, just friends. Her panties clearly indicated a close friendship. "Don't bother me while I'm putting on makeup. Get dressed for dinner. We're at the restaurant at 8:15, she said, heading to the bathroom and closing the door behind her. I quickly changed my clothes and left the cabin. I took a walk around the ship to calm down a bit and showed up at the restaurant at the appointed time of 8:15 p.m. There was a large crowd waiting to enter. When I finally entered the room, I saw Wes pull out a chair for Tina and sit her down. And then that bastard sat in the seat that should have been mine. As a result, there were no chairs left for me at the table. I was already thinking about making a scene, but I didn't know how the ship's staff would react to this and whether there would be unpleasant consequences for me. And that's exactly how this whole damn cruise went. I was forgotten and rejected. Tina and Wes were a couple the entire trip. The next day, I ran into her son, Pete. "Tom, what's going on with your mom?" he asked. "Looks like she replaced me with Wes," I replied. "Damn, I don't even know what to say. I can't believe she did this to Wes the first night she sat him at our table. I saw you coming towards us, but then you turned around and left when you realized what was happening. Have you spoken to her? Do you want me to talk to her?" "No, I haven't spoken to her, but I'm sure we'll discuss her behavior soon." "Okay, don't give up. I'll talk to her. Try not to let her actions ruin your cruise. I'll let you know if I find out anything." "Thank you, Pete." I liked Pete. He looked a bit like a hippie from the 50s or 60s. He had curly hair, as if he always wore a perm. He smoked often and liked to drink. But despite this, he was a very smart man. He had 2 master's degrees and worked in the upper management of Ford. But to be honest, I didn't really care if he talked to his mother. No, I didn't care. When Tina did the paperwork for the cruise card, she linked it to my American Express credit card for both of us. After her adventures with Wes in the hotel and restaurant on the ship, I decided to change the situation. I went to the customer service desk and asked her to remove my credit card from her account and change the card to a cash payment system. They explained to me that I could deposit a certain amount of cash on the card, and when it was almost gone, I would need to top up the balance again. This will prevent large charges from piling up on my credit card. There are many ways to punish a woman for cheating. The morning after my conversation with Pete, I finally met with Tina for a serious conversation. She'd been spending most of her time with Wes since the start of the cruise, and it was really bothering me. I was in the cabin changing into my bathing suit when she came in. "What did you do with our cruise cards?" she asked sharply. "I transferred them to cash," I answered calmly. "Why did you do this?" Her voice trembled with indignation. "So you can't run up my score by having fun with Wes." "You bastard! How could you think that I would spend money on him?" she screamed. "It wasn't difficult. For several days now you have spent practically no time with me, only with him." "What, are you having problems with your card?" I asked. "Yes, I tried to sign up for treatments at the spa for Wes and I, but there was no money on the card. Your credit card was not there, and the amount of cash was very small. You humiliated me in front of the staff, Tom. We agreed that I would pay for the cruise itself, air tickets and hotel, and you would cover all expenses on the ship," she reminded me. "Yes, that was our agreement. But now that you're with Wes and not me, it doesn't work anymore. If you want to keep spending money, use your credit card or ask Wes to pay for everything," I replied dryly. "You're becoming the worst travel companion I've ever had on a cruise," she blurted out. "How do you know? You don't give me the opportunity to be with you. You spend all your time with Wes, and you haven't touched me since we got back from Florida. And the first night you met him, you had sex with him. And you continue to do this all these days. This is how my cruise turned out. So as soon as I ran away on Friday night, I exploded with anger. I was furious, and Tina knew it. But she answered me with words that simply stunned me. I'm a grown woman, and I can do whatever I want. We're not in a just you and me relationship, and you don't own me, she said with icy calm. What? We've been living together for over a year. Doesn't that mean we're in an exclusive relationship? I shouted. No. An exclusive relationship means either engagement or marriage, and we have neither, she replied with a grin. I froze for a second, just staring at her, not believing my ears. I needed to stop for a moment and reconsider my thoughts. I was confused. So, by your definition, I can go to the pool, meet any woman there, bring her here, and sleep with her? I asked sarcastically. No, not in this room. This is our safe zone. If you're lucky, take her somewhere else, but not here, she said, maintaining her icy tone. I sighed heavily, feeling like an insurmountable wall stood in front of me. Everything she said and did ruined our relationship. My thoughts about saving them disappeared. Why did I allow myself to be in this situation? If you just want sex, why don't we do it now? She suggested with a grin. I wouldn't sleep with you now for anything in the world and risk my health. Who knows what diseases he could pass on to you? I'm not going to take risks for cheap fun, I replied with disgust. Well, don't say I didn't offer. Come on, do whatever you want, and I'll go take a shower, change clothes, and go ashore with Wes, she challenged and went into the bathroom. I left the cabin. This is exactly how our entire cruise went. No, I did not have sex with other women, although there were several offers that I politely declined. The only good thing that happened during the trip was at the casino. I spent a lot of time playing the game because I had nothing else to do. The first night I won $500 on the slot machines, but then my luck ran out. I lost about $10,000 playing craps and blackjack. They make it so simple. You insert your card into the ATM, get cash, and sit back down at the table. On the last night, I was left with my last $50. I bet 25 on the main bet and 25 on the lucky queens. You can bet a maximum of $25 on the lucky ladies. To win, you need to get 2 queens of hearts in your hands, for which you pay 250 to 1. If the dealer has 21 in hand, then the payout is 1,000 to 1, and the maximum win is $25,000. This is exactly what happened to me. I made back all my losses and won a little more, a little over 12,000. Finally, the cruise ended and the ship returned to Fort Lauderdale. I had already packed my bags for the trip home and was standing at the ramp when Tina approached me. "Where is your luggage?" I asked. "Tom, Wes and I are staying on the ship and going on another cruise. His cabin has become available so we can stay there. I'll be back in a week," she said. I gave her an angry look and nodded silently. I handed her an envelope with $2,000. "Here, this will cover my share for the cruise. You will pay for all your expenses yourself," I said. I didn't let her see the tears welling up in my eyes. I caught a taxi and asked the driver to take me to the airport. At the airport, I avoided company until it was time to board. On the plane, Pete's seat was directly in front of mine. "Where is Mom?" he asked. "She and Wes went on a cruise again." "Oh man, this is terrible. I'm sorry she did this to you." "What will you do now?" he asked regretfully. "Well, we're not married, so I can't burn bridges. But I think I can kick her out of my apartment," I replied. When I got home, I called a few of my friends and invited them to meet at our favorite cafe, where we always had coffee. I needed their help in carrying out the plan. At the meeting on Monday, I told them in detail what I was going to do. We agreed to meet on Thursday to remove all her things. I rented a storage unit to store her things. On Monday, I went to the hardware store and bought a new washer and dryer. Then I went to a furniture store to replace the furniture that was hers. The move was not easy, but we made it through. Lord, she had 60 boxes of shoes. Who in their right mind could own that many shoes? Her Trailblazer SUV was sitting in my garage, so I filled it to the top with her clothes that were in my closet. The car was so crowded that you couldn't see anything through the rear windows. Hell, some of her things still had price tags on them. I drove the SUV to her son, Mark Jr.'s house, and explained to him what happened. I changed all the locks in my apartment. Tina can come and check out the apartment to pick up things I might have accidentally missed, but you have to come with her, I told him, handing over the key to the rented storage unit. A couple of weeks later, she actually came to inspect the apartment and pick up the remaining things. She hinted at the possibility of a reunion, but I quickly brushed her off. Interestingly, she never apologized for her behavior. I don't know if she ended up with Wes or if anything ever happened to him. To be honest, I didn't care anymore. Speaking of revenge, here's what happened next. I was in the supermarket buying my monthly groceries when I ran into a woman named Penny. Until that moment, I only knew her by that name and did not know that her real name was Priscilla or that her ex-husband was Wes. Here's how it happened. "Hello, Tom. How are you? I'm really sorry to hear about your breakup with Tina and what happened on the cruise," she said. "Hello, Penny. Yes, I'm fine. Thanks for asking. It was a hell of a cruise, and Tina's behavior with her ex-boyfriend was the reason for our breakup. Her old friend Wes showed up at the hotel the night before the cruise, and she spent most of the night with him, and then the entire cruise. Moreover, after the cruise, they went sailing again on the same ship," I explained. "Wes? My Wes? I mean my ex-husband Wes?" she asked in surprise. "I don't know, let me describe it," I answered. "Yes, it's him," she said angrily. "Did you know that Tina dated Wes several years before me?" She was telling me about the 4th of July party Wes was at, and how they spent the night together while his ex-wife Priscilla was looking for him, I continued. "My real name is Priscilla, but everyone calls me Penny. I think it's time to have a serious talk with Tina and let her know that she will no longer be part of my family. She considers herself a second grandmother to my grandchildren, but I'm going to stop that." "Thank you for the information, Tom," she said, clearly angry. As for Tina, she returned to her apartment. I saw her from time to time, but tried to avoid her. Sometimes we talked briefly, and she admitted that she was living alone again, just like before we met. I don't know if she broke up with Wes or just didn't want to talk about him, but I wasn't interested. One day, she finally apologized to me. "Tom, I'm very sorry for how I treated you on the cruise. I'm not sure why I acted this way. I hope one day you can forgive me. But you got back at me by telling Priscilla about Wes and me. Now I have been removed from her family and grandchildren, and this has become my biggest loss," she said, crying. "Answer me a couple of questions. A few months before the cruise, were you dating Wes? And was this meeting at the hotel on Friday evening before leaving by chance or planned?" I asked her. She lowered her head and remained silent. "That's what I thought." "Goodbye, Tina," I said and left. I didn't let her actions ruin my life. I registered on dating sites again. There are still plenty of fish in the sea. I dated different women and had enough sex to satisfy myself. But now I was convinced that the women I dated did not have ghosts in their past that could come back to haunt me. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one. Click to the next one. Click to the next